Welcome. I'm Carl Frederick, and I will be interviewing individuals for Kenosha Voices, an oral history project of the Kenosha County Historical Society in conjunction with Kenosha Community Media. I have worked in newspapers for more than 40 years as an editor and a reporter. 38 and a half of those years were at the Kenosha News. I am also a member of the Kenosha County Historical Society Board. We hope you enjoy these programs. I'm speaking with Joe Wynn today, founder and CEO of Walkin in My Shoes. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me today.
Tell me, how did you come to Kenosha? How did you decide to move here?
I came to Kenosha in 2003 after having difficulties where I was living in Chandler, Arizona. I lost my job, my home, my health care, and I lost everything pretty much.
And did you have a place to go when you came here?
I did. A friend of mine who actually lives here now, I was staying with her when I came here.
Okay. And you mentioned that you came to Kenosha because of difficulty with the job that you had in Arizona. Now, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Chicago my whole life. I was born, I lived on the west side of Chicago in the Springfield area, and I grew up, and then I went from high school to marriage to children, and I moved from the south side to the north side. And
what kind of jobs did you have while you were in Chicago?
Oh, I had amazing jobs. I started working at 17, and the very first job I had was working for the water company for the city. It was a summer job, but it was really self-rewarding. And right after that, I started from a file clerk to a customer service representative to a quality assurance specialist.
Okay.
So each job that I had, I built my skills up, was able to help fix problems on the job through customer service, problem solving, and promotions.
And then how long did you work in Chicago?
Oh God, that was pretty much since I was 17. I worked all my life.
Okay, and then what were the circumstances that led you to move from Chicago?
I lost my mom, and we were all so close, and it was like an apron string. When you don't cut it, you always are connected to it. And I was having a very difficult time losing my mom because I had lost my dad, the only two brothers that I had, they passed away, and then my mother. And I felt like I just had to get away.
Okay, and then how did you find a job in Arizona?
Well, it started when a friend of mine called to check on me. Her and her husband moved to Phoenix, Arizona 2 years prior to me leaving. And she called on a Sunday, and the caller ID showed Phoenix, Arizona, and I thought she was there vacationing. And I said, Vicki, what are you doing in Arizona? And she said, I moved here. And I was like, oh, wow. And that light bulb just went off. I said, would you mind if I relocate there? She said, I would love to have you come. So what I did after being on my job for 10 years, I decided to first look for a job, which I found everything online. I went to Arizona for an interview. They loved my resume, and I was hired. Then I came back to Chicago, and I gave in my notice to move. And I had to have all my furniture, what I was going to take. I had to have that shipped there. And then I found an apartment, because in Arizona, you can find an apartment in the same day. And so what happened is I booked an airline with Southwest, and the next thing I know, I was living in Arizona.
And you had a job already lined up, you already had your apartment, everything was set.
I had everything. It was just, at that time, it was just how things was well put together, because you can relocate to any, I would think, any state. You just have to get it set up. The manager who hired me in Arizona, it was for a pool company, but they liked my resume, and which I was pretty proud of. And customer service is something you really do have to be a good problem solver in order to help fix consumer problems.
So, and you moved to Arizona then in, what year did you move to Arizona?
In '93, I believe.
Okay, so you worked for this company for 10 years before you came to Kenosha.
Yes.
Okay. Can you describe the working, stuff that you did for this pool company, and what happened while you were there, why you would leave that job?
Well, it was a different kind of industry, because when I was in Chicago, I was working for the College of American Pathologists, and I was hired to reorganize the customer service department there. So when I moved to Arizona, I was helping with swimming pools. So it was a little different kind of customer service. But from there, it was a promotion. I went from customer service to quality assurance. And on this job, that's when the difficulties started, because people were not so friendly, not so accepting of me being someone of color, coming in and kind of just moving myself up to the rank. But the owner of the company saw my self-worth. He loved the work that I was doing and the money I was building for the company. And that's how I ended up being in that position before I left Arizona.
And then what were the circumstances of leaving Arizona?
Well, you can't run away from depression. And leaving because of the pain that I was feeling, from Mom being homesick. My family, they're all in Chicago, my kids. And so my kids were starting to visit, to come and travel. We were all just like one family in a melting pot. And they were afraid to fly, but I wasn't. So it actually helped them to start thinking about, traveling and seeing the world with their kids. But this job that I had, I really loved it, because I had bought my little toy Maltese, and the owner allowed me to stay home, and they hooked me up, and they allowed me to stay home so I could take care of him until he was a little older. But my dog has always had separation anxiety. So it became a challenge, because when I had to go to work, I would have to leave him, and I would leave him in a cage, because when I didn't, he would just tear up the whole house. But on this job, my coworkers were not happy with that. They didn't like the idea that, why are you giving her the privilege to be able to do this? Well, you don't need to stay home and take care of a baby or a dog. But the people on my job, they were sabotaging my work, trying to make me look bad. And I feel like the owner, my boss, was not defending me. And I sank down into a depression. And one day I just woke up and I couldn't get out of bed to go to work. And I said, I can't do this anymore. And I ended up not going to work. You don't get paid. And when you lose your job, I went through all my unemployment. Every unemployment I've ever built up was gone, and I just couldn't do it. And
did you call somebody, or did somebody call you to come to Kenosha?
Well, that was down the road. When that didn't happen until when I was working, I bought a townhouse, brand new, built from the ground up, and I actually watched them build it when I would get off work and go to this work site and see it. And that was the one part of Arizona I was sorry that I lost, because once you lose your home and you have no income, and there was no support to be able to keep the mortgage payments going. And so that trickle-down effect was the job, and then my medical insurance, couldn't go see the doctor. And after that, that's when the bank said, you either pay the mortgage or the house is gonna go in foreclosure. And that's exactly what happened. And I just could not get myself up to go back to work for anyone. And I battled depression all my life, but not this severe. And it had came to a point I was seeing a psychotherapist. They were trying to medicate me for it, but it just wasn't working. It just made me feel worse. And from there, I just ended up, I lost everything. So I still talk to my family. They was like, why don't you just come back home? And I was like, I don't want to come back to Chicago. That was a life that I left, and I just didn't want to have to start over again in Chicago. Apartments were more expensive then, and the neighborhoods, and then the job, and you have to see what you can afford. And I didn't want that anymore. So then a friend of mine, she called, and I said, what are you doing in Kenosha? I always say, what are you doing in Kenosha? And she left Chicago and moved to Kenosha with her family. And she said, if you like, you could come stay with me. And I'm like, I heard, Kenosha, Wisconsin is just like corn and farmland. And she's like, no, it's nothing like that. It's great for raising your children. It's a really quiet town. And she convinced me to give it a try. So once again, I packed up, and but this time I got a ride. I wasn't able to get on a plane. My son came to Arizona, and we put all my belongings in a U-Haul truck, the biggest one they had. We hitched the car that I had on one of the flatbed. And when I came, I put all my belongings in a storage here. And then I ended up moving in with my friend and her family. But it was my dog that was giving me the most. My dog was, Isaiah was not even, I want to say he was maybe 7, because we were just never separated. So he really had a problem with that. And I had to go and look for help. And when I left, all he would do was just bark and cry. And so the apartment that they were living in, the manager sent her a letter. And the letter said that I could stay, but the dog had to go because their pets were not allowed. When I first moved here, pets were not allowed to move in any apartments. And her feeling bad, it's like, well, I don't know what to tell you, because I didn't want to risk her losing her lease. And so I started hitting the pavement, trying to find somewhere to go, because I had money. I had a little bit of money. And I started hitting the pavement, but everywhere I go, they didn't accept dogs. So then when I went to, I want to say, the one day I went to the Spanish Center when they were still open. And I left my dog, and when I came back, my friend received another letter. That was like her second warning. The dog had to go. So we had that conversation. I packed up what I had over there, took my dog, put him in my backpack, and I left. But when I did, I had nowhere to go. And that's how I ended up being homeless here in Kenosha.
So when you say you had nowhere to go, I mean, did you look into options that were in Kenosha for help for finding a place or anything like that?
I did. I started going to, I remember going to the Spanish Center. That's when the Kenosha News photographer at that time saw me, and it rained, and I used the newspaper to cover my hair. I left there and they said, well, they didn't really have any housing, but they gave me, they sent me to the job center, and I went there, the one on Sheridan. They sent me to the job center and they gave me a sheet of paper, and it had all the shelters where you could go for food and help, for medical. They had everything listed on one piece of paper. And I asked the girl at the counter, I said, well, what is this? And she said, well, go down the list and, start making phone calls. And I said, me being from Arizona, not knowing anybody here, I was hoping that I could get a little more help than that. So she pointed out the shelter. I contacted the Shalom Center. They had me go over there. I stood outside with maybe 5 or 10 people, and they were starting to line up. But then when they opened the door, the lady was so sweet. She's like, ma'am, why are you here? And I said, well, I'm here to, get a place to stay. And she's like, oh no, this shelter is just for women with children. I was like, oh wow. I looked at the paper and I said, oh wow, it doesn't even say that. And she said, well, we have the INS program. You could go there. And I'm thinking, oh wow, that's gonna be nice.
What is the INS program?
Because I thought the INS program was, in Chicago, they were rooms, like rooming houses like they have here. And I'm thinking, okay, well, me and Isaiah will get our own room. So I go there, people are lining up again. And I'm thinking, okay. 7 o'clock come and the door of the church open. So we go in and they register all newcomers. So I sit down with the manager and I said, ma'am, can you tell me where am I gonna be staying tonight? And she pointed to the left. And then when I looked to the left, all I saw was mats up against the wall and women with children walking over to that side. And the men were going to the right. And then she asked my name and everything, and I gave it to her. And I said, excuse me, ma'am, are we gonna be sleeping on the floor? And she said, yeah, on the mat. And I said, I'm sorry. This is inhumane. I said, people should not be sleeping on the floor when this is a country that I know we could do better than that. And she looked at me and she said, take it or leave it. And I got up and I thanked her and I walked out the door and I looked up to the heavens and I said, okay, now Lord, what do I do? Because this was it according to that paper. And there was nowhere else I could go because the Shalom Center has always been the provider for emergency shelter for the homeless, and that's everyone, veterans, children, teenagers. And I found a little cubby hole to stay with Isaiah behind Walgreens when Walgreens was downtown. And they had a heating grate down and steam was blowing up. And the very next day, I'll never forget it, I went and I started knocking on the doors of the politicians. And I went to see the mayor and I told him what had happened, explained my whole life story. And he was like, I'm so sorry. He had such empathy for what I was going through. I said, I just turned 51 years old and there's no senior programs out here at all. He started making phone calls.
This was Mayor
Mayor Antiranium, the first time, because Mayor Bosman came after that, and then he came back again. But Mayor Antiranium, he invited me in his office, and I sat my backpack on the floor, and I unzipped it, and out popped Isaiah. And it's like, oh wow, that's the cutest little thing I've ever seen. And I said, yeah. And I said, he's the reason why I'm going through this. So what he did is he apologized. He said, I'm so sorry that you're going through this. And he picked up the phone and he made several phone calls and he found out there was nowhere for me to go. And how sincere he was, he offered to take my dog home with him. so I could go back to stay with my friend. But I told him no, my dog was my emotional support and I just couldn't part with him. So he called the Humane Society, and they told him that they would bore him if I had $100 to give them, which I didn't have that much. And I said, no, I don't want to put him in a shelter, because I know he's going to really, if he's whining and crying and he's away from me now, he wouldn't survive. And he was so little. He was only 3 pounds. He just wouldn't make it. And I said, no, I can't part with my dog. I just can't. And he said, like, I'm sorry, well, this is, all we have, unfortunately. And I thanked him for spending the time with me that he did. I zipped my dog back up and I put my backpack on and I left. And then I ended up going to Paul Ryan's office. And I went to Society Asset, because they work with people, seniors, but it's only if you get disability and you need, some kind of physical care. But I mean, I hit the pavements, I did not stop. And when I went to Paul Ryan's office, they was just about to close. So the person at the time told me to come back the next day. And I'm thinking, you know what, I feel like things are starting to look up for me.
And Paul Ryan was what?
He was the first congressional congressman,
Okay.
and Republican. But I didn't care what the politics were. I just needed somebody to help me. But they were so kind to me as well. And the associate there, I told him what had happened. Because while I was going through my depression in Arizona, I had filed for, it was work disability. I had put in an application for that. And so it had already been processed. But it was just sitting in Baltimore waiting to be released. And then the challenge came where I ended up going to Milwaukee before a judge, because they wanted to know, why is my disability being put on hold? And Paul Ryan's office at the time, they made a phone call to find out, because they handle mostly federal matters. And so I had to go to court, and the judge said he had no reason why I should not have my disability, and it was work disability at the time. And then I went back to the congressman's office, and the aide told me to go and open up a bank account. And I said, I have no money, to do that. He said, go to TCF Bank, which was down the street, and open up what they consider for Social Security. So I went there. Sure enough, they opened the account, and they deposited the money in the very next day. I think it was on a Tuesday. They deposited the money the very next day. And I was like, oh my God. I didn't think miracles happen like that, but it did. And but this whole time I was on the street for 3 days, not having nowhere to go. I ate like at Taco Bell, McDonald's, and Isaiah was in my backpack the whole time. And I said, you better not say anything, because I need to get us something to eat. But he was so well trained, so quiet, just a loving, little humble little dog. And it was because of Isaiah that I started the backpack program.
Okay, so the disability money came through, which allowed you to find an apartment?
I actually found, when the doors said, no, we don't want any pets, I found a house, a rental house, 2 bedrooms on Sheridan Road, not that far from the Sheridan bowling lane. And I talked to the owner, and he said, no, we don't take pets. And I said, sir, I said, my dog is a show dog. He will not damage anything. He won't touch anything that doesn't belong with it, that's his. And he said, he saw the desperation. I said, sir, I've been looking, no apartments will accept pets. The house wasn't that perfect, but it was livable and something that I could have my dog. And he said to me, okay, I'm willing to take a chance and rent this house to you, providing you'll have to put down a pet deposit. I signed a lease with him the very same day. We were standing in the kitchen. And I was able to get my belongings out of the storage unit, and I moved into that house until my dog died.
Okay, and what year did you move into the house?
I want to say I moved into the house in '03. I moved into the house in '03. And no, let's go back. I was '04. I was in '04. July of '04, by the way. And I remember that now, yeah.
Okay, so you now have an apartment, you
I
have
have
your
a
dog.
home on a
and
backyard.
You wake up the next day, and what do you want to do?
Well, that was the challenge, because Kenosha was so new to me. I had the funding. I didn't want to go back and work in the private sector anymore, because I didn't want to have another mental, emotional breakdown. And what happened is I looked down at my dog and I looked at the backpack I was carrying. I still have it, by the way, too. And the vision just came to me to start the backpack program. And at first I didn't know what it was going to be, but as I started thinking about the challenges that the homeless face then, that they still face today, I decided to put a little bit of dignity in the backpack.
So, is this the beginning of Walking in My Shoes?
Yes, the beginning. Well, actually, I started Walking in My Shoes in July of 2005, but the vision of it, that was in 2004.
Okay, and your vision of this backpack, giving the homeless some dignity, what was in the backpack?
I started with a sleeping bag and personal care items, and and meals ready to eat. It was something that you can find and you could eat right away. And I would put bottled water in there and resources strictly for the homeless. And they were, it was a booklet. They were page number. There was a section for just veterans, a section for seniors, and then there was one for individuals and families. I took that sheet that was given to me, I deciphered through it. I saw that a lot of the resources did not even apply to the homeless community. And what I did is I started going to visit different organizations, including the Shalom Center, and I gathered all the resources and said, is this current? Is it effective? How does it help someone who would be homeless with a child or individual? And what I did is I categorized it, just like problem solving. In customer service, I categorized the resource book, so the homeless community could know as soon as they open it, this is what was available to them.
And was this for anyone who was homeless?
Anyone.
And then how long did you do this backpack program?
Oh, I continued to do the backpack program.
Okay.
It has changed over the years because now we moved to a duffel bag, because the sleeping bag, I went to Dick's Sporting Goods and they were showing me, training me actually how to put your sleeping bag back into the backpack once you open it. Well, that didn't work because the backpacks I was buying at the time just did not, it wasn't big enough. So then I moved to the duffel bags to be able to, they could roll it up and stuff it in the duffel bag and still have room to put other belongings inside.
Okay. And beyond this backpack program, did you develop then another specific program for a segment of the homeless?
After, I want to say after maybe a year, because I started the IDA House Youth Program. I started that in 2006.
Okay, and what was that?
That was a program just for the youth, 18, 21, 25. But it was strictly for the youth because I found that there was nothing out there for them. And the homeless youth were treated just like individuals. But some of them were out there with children, little babies. And a board member of ours lived in Chicago. Her friend, it was her niece. She battled mental illness, but she had a baby. And her baby was 6 weeks old. And the board member called me and asked if I could find a place for this young lady to stay with the baby. And I said, well, I already know what the shelters are here in Kenosha. But I did know at the time, Dan Mallion was the director. I made a phone call to him, and there was a room available. He told me that she could come and stay with the baby, but the room would not be available until the day after. So I said she can come and stay with me, and then this way she can go right on to the Shalom Center, and they would secure a place for her to stay. And my son, he travels a lot for me. He went to Chicago and he picked her and the baby up, and I gave her my bed that night. And she stayed overnight, and I helped her, clean the baby up. But then I found out she was on disability for a congenital disability that she had. So she needed a payee. And she asked me, would I be her payee? It was back to Milwaukee again. But the Social Security Administration in Milwaukee, they had me be her payee. And she stayed at the Shalom Center. I was able to help her get an apartment, and all I had to do was pay all her bills. And whatever was left over, we had TCF Bank. You can open up 2 accounts. But people on Social Security, you have to open, it's like a disability account, because that's where the check would go. And once I paid everything for her, whatever was left was for her. And it worked out so well, because she was never homeless again. And her son now is 17 years old, and they live in Evanston. And he is so smart that he can graduate now. He is just a gifted kid. But Ida was the reason that I started the youth program. And that is going on to this day. And that's what the campaign with the postcard, that is what that is for. It represents our youth in our community who are homeless and kicked out for no reason at all. They turn 18 and it's like the love just stopped and they have nowhere to go. So Ida's house is my #1 priority now.
Okay, and then where do you get support for the backpack program and then the Ida's house, which is the backpack program for youth, right?
Ida's house is, well, the funding that we get is from the generosity and the support of the community. When the Kenosha News came out and wrote an article, Walkin in My Shoes was like the newest nonprofit in the community. And at that time, I didn't know that the reporter had saw that picture that the photographer took of me with the newspaper. So he, at that time, I believe he got in contact with me and asked if I wanted to do an interview. I'm like, yeah, we could use the help, because the backpack program was actually being done in my house. And that was from 2004, 2005. And the community had read the article. I started getting phone calls and people wanting to know, where can we drop these things off? But I didn't want them to come to my house, so I would go and pick, the things up. But the backpack program was the #1 program. Ida House was a little more challenging because these kids needed a place to stay. And then I started working with the Kenosha Human Development Services because they had a outreach program for teenagers. So our partnership with them was amazing because any kid I would come in contact with at that time, they were taking care of them and made sure that they would go into the youth program, which was a place they could stay for up to 24 months.
This would be like a room or
an apartment.
Okay.
It would be an apartment that they would transition into. And these kids were required to go back to school. If you're not going to go to school, get a job and work, because that's what the program is, to transition them off the program and be self-sufficient. Well, with any of the nonprofits, when the funding is not there, the service tapers down. That's when I knew that Ida House was a little more involved, and I would have to start thinking about where can they go when this program couldn't help them. So then foster mothers that no longer were foster parents, they were contacting me offering a room for the teenagers, providing that they were in school or they were working, just to help them get back on their feet. And then the former fire police chief, him and his wife contacted me. They took a young man in their home, and it just evolved by just community being together, wanting to fix the same problem that we were having. And we were able to put kids in a hotel for a little while, but my challenge then became when they were 16 and 17 years old, we cannot house minors. So then I started working with the Department of Children and Family here in Kenosha. And any of the youth there, they would take them and put them in a program, put them like in an independent program, because by the time they age out at 18, then they would have the apartment to stay.
Okay, and that continues today?
That continues today.
Did you develop any other program?
Besides the IDAS program, then I started the healthy living for homeless people who were sick and they were not going to the doctor. They didn't have medical insurance. At that time in 2006, I would make their doctor's appointments with the Kenosha Community Health Center, and they would actually see them the very same day. And our program would help them get any prescription if they needed it. I would go buy cough syrup, cough drops, anything that the homeless community needed. The funding that was coming in, I was able to use that money to buy it, because I was always able to justify what I'm going to spend the money on. But the healthy living was to actually just get them to get their health together, the vision, the dental. And at that time, so much was working as a community together. But today, we're all separate for some reason, and the partnership, it's not as together as I would hope. But over the years, I've developed over 100 community partners: Milwaukee, Chicago, Washington, Racine. I don't just stay in one place. I go and I call wherever I can get someone help, even helping the homeless get back to their own community if they want to go. But I would make that connection for them first before they would leave here.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Did you develop further programs for different segments of the population, grandparents, veterans, incarcerated homeless. Did you develop anything to help them?
I did. When I realized that our circumstances are different, not everybody is facing the same problem, because we all have our challenges and why we were homeless. Mine happened to be my little dog. But when I see veterans out here, from day one, when I was coming in contact with a homeless veteran, I was like, oh wow, I would think housing would just be right there for them. They served this country. And I saw that that was further from the truth. And so I would go to, First Step used to be open. I would go to the day shelter, and I partnered with them very well. And this one veteran, Joe, he was in there eating, and I sat next to him, and he told me he was a veteran. And I said, Joe, why are you in here? And he said, you know, I went through a divorce, lost my wife and my 2 children. He fell not to PTSD, but to depression. And he said, I just can't find anywhere to stay. And I said, Joe, if I find somewhere for you to go, will you take the apartment? He was getting his VA benefits. And he told me, yes, he would. And I found a rooming house for him to stay in. And I fixed up the room for him. And that actually was the day that I went full force helping our veterans.
And what did you do beyond helping Joe?
Oh, I started helping our seniors. I started the Stepping Up program. That's a little different than the homeless.
Now, before you go to the Stepping Up program, I mean, helping the veterans. I mean, you found Joe an apartment.
Yes,
Okay. Did you work with other veterans
I did.
and partnerships, and what did that evolve into?
Well, when I started with Joe, and I found out that there were other veterans just like him, some of them have made homelessness a way of life, and the PTSD. They didn't want to move into an apartment. They didn't want the help. Sometimes I would sit there and literally beg them, will you just please take this sleeping bag so you won't be sleeping on a wet grass. And it was like pushing and forcing them to do that, because I just wanted them to know that somebody out here really do care about you. And then I came in contact with 3 homeless Marine brothers. They all had alcohol addiction. And they too was not looking to stay in any shelter. They were not looking for an apartment. They just wanted to be left alone. As soon as I brought up, well, let me connect you with the VA. I don't want to have nothing to do with them. And I was like, wow, the communication in a relationship. I was like, why? They needed their benefits, and some of them, there were challenges to even get that. So as soon as I would mention the VA, they would just shut down on me. And I said, well, then, you know what? I'm going to ask the community to help me so we can get you more help. The rooming houses back then used to be fantastic. They were $300, $400 for the month. These were single people. But as anything in life, you know, the world changes on us, and things don't get better. It seems to trickle down to the worst. And some veterans moved in with family members. Some didn't want to do it at all because of the PTSD. So they just want to be left alone.
What about veterans who were waiting for their benefits to come in and didn't have a place to go? Did you find a way to get them a motel or a place to stay for a couple of days until the benefits came in?
We did with the funding, because the way I see the effort that I put forth to help someone, our funding, it's not there. So what little we did have, I will put them up in a motel for a week, but it takes a month for VA benefits to kick in. It doesn't come overnight like my Social Security did. And with all the different departments, they have to go through all the democracy of it. I was like, this is why people are going through what they're going through right now. But veterans shouldn't spend one day going through this red tape at all. But it was the way the programs, any governmental program, this is just the way it's set up. So they would stay on the street. They would literally stay there until Audley Nelson, he was the director at the time. Audley Nelson had heard what I was doing for our vets, and he contacted me, and he spent a day with me. We did outreach, and I took him to an area where I know the veterans congregate every day. They get together, have coffee, and talk. He actually offered them all, each one of them, housing. Some went to the tiny homes in Racine. Some went to hotels. Some had housing vouchers that he was able to get them. But none of them were homeless after he took over.
Okay.
And it worked out. It worked out for the best because then I had the connection. I knew it directly who to go to for our veterans. And I still have that relationship to this day.
Okay, and are you doing anything recently for veterans?
Oh, yes. We have the Bunkers Coffee House for veterans.
What is that?
The ideal came from a veteran, a homeless veteran, too. It's a coffee house where veterans can come. It's like a safe space where they can come and gather.
Is this open in the mornings, or is it open every day?
Well, we're doing summer hours right now, so we're open Tuesday and Thursday and alternate Saturdays. But we open from 9 to 1. And the veterans come, and they come and have coffee. And if they need to get signed up for their benefits, I have the connection where I would email the Kenosha office. Some of them need their DD-214, so they can go to the Kenosha office to get a copy of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a permanent connection for our veterans. And whether they're homeless or they're in their housing, but they still are going through the challenge of getting their disability.
Okay, and you mentioned the Stepping Up program a bit ago. What is the Stepping Up program?
The Stepping Up program, I think I missed one. Can I look at my notes?
Sure.
Okay, I brought my brochure.
Well, we did mention the incarceration program.
That came after, let's see. After Ida's house in 2014, In the Hands of Hope came. And the chaplain for the Kenosha County Detention Center, we went to we went to an event for the police force here, and the chaplain asked me if I could come in as a volunteer to help homeless people that they were identified homeless prior to their incarceration. And I'm like, sure, I could do some outreach there. And I began to help them in a way where I was giving them the same information based on their circumstances. Some had mental illness, some, I would say, non-violent offense, retail theft. They were doing anything to have a place to stay. So they would be incarcerated for it. And in just a short time, the program manager at the time, not knowing that, you're kind of being listened to, the manager approached me and asked me would I be willing to come in and do this on a monthly basis with them. And I was like, sure. But he said, we would contract with you to do that. And I said, oh, wow, I never thought in a million years this could ever happen. but it was a position that they made up. And I've been doing this for 9 years as their aftercare specialist. And I go in three Mondays each month, 3 weeks each month, to work with inmates who have been identified homeless prior to their incarceration. I started with the women, then word got around, and then they added more to the contract, and then I started working with the homeless men. Then I found out there were homeless veterans there. And so it with anything, word of mouth gets around, and the contract extended, and they invited me to come back, and I've been coming back every year for 9 years now. But I went in as a volunteer. Mm-hmm. And so that program came before the Stepping Up program.
Okay.
And the names that I came up with, it just kind of made sense, the people that I was helping. We've never taken walk-ins, and this particular day a grandparent had came to the office looking for help. And I found out that they were getting kinship income, which was not very much, but they were taking care of many children. And the grandmother had asked me, I know it's a homeless program, but do you help other people? I said, absolutely. What do you need help with? And that's how that started.
And how do you help them?
Well, I started by helping them with food, because they were treated just like the homeless community. It was income based, and the grandparents, they worked all their lives. They had retirement money, so they weren't qualified for any programs. And I'm thinking, that's not fair. And so I started helping them with food cards, because one grandmother, her grandson was born with many disabilities, and there were certain foods he couldn't eat. He couldn't drink regular vitamin D milk. He had to have like a soy milk. She wasn't getting any help to buy all these things.
This program was to help grandparents who were raising their grandchildren.
Raising their grandchildren to keep them out of the foster care system. Right. That's how it started. That's how she ended up taking care of her grandchildren. It's because when they go to foster care, they do look for family members for the kids to go to. But with that come very little income when it's a family member. And so that's how that started. And I started buying school uniforms. They were wearing uniforms at the time. We took care of the uniforms. And to this day, we still do that. Underwear, personal care items. The grandparents don't have to spend any of that food money to buy any of that. And Piggly Wiggly would let us have, every year, we would do a brat wagon, and all the funds that we raised from that would go to the grandparents to be able to buy all the supplies that they needed.
Okay, so other than Piggly Wiggly, what other groups have come to you to help out? And can you think of any other or grants that you've applied for and gotten money through to help your program?
Well, when I saw that the community donations had trickled down, someone had told me, I need to start writing for grants, because we didn't get our 501c tax exemption until 2007. And so that's when they take you more serious, is when you're an exempt and they can see your finances. So I started applying for grants, and I'll never forget John Melanoskis. He just recently passed away, but he wrote my very first grant. And I was able to get funding from St. Mary's Lutheran Church, the Lions Foundation, the Green Bay Packer Foundation, Walmart, Sam's Club, and I was like, oh wow. And it had became the proposal that he had written. I used the same format for each one of them, And then when they saw the narrative, we're all volunteers, and the chart shows that 75% of the funding goes right into the program. And it's still like that today. I'm still doing this on a voluntarily basis, and more people have stepped up to help me. And I have 2 people that has volunteered to go out and do the outreach part for me, because now I have to focus on being at the coffee house when the veterans come.
And where is the coffee house?
It's at our office, 2211 50th Street. I flipped it to be the coffee house because I wanted to create something that would be convenient for them, and it would always be a place that they could go. But the Bunkers Coffee House, I set that up as a program where veterans would help other veterans. So right now I am currently looking for someone who can come in and I can train them, and whether they be volunteer, because we can't pay them. There's just no funding there for that. And right now there's one veteran, he volunteers on Thursday, and he's also a pastor of a church, and that has helped out a lot too. And his church donate funding to the coffee house now because of that.
Any other churches other than that church and St. Mary's Lutheran Foundation that has helped you out?
Well, Journey Church, they donated, they came in and they renovated our whole basement to be a drop-in center for homeless teenagers. And they have given us donations, monetary. Right now they're doing the prison ministry. So each month they give us personal care items for the people who are incarcerated. And then other churches, St. Paul Lutheran Church, there's so many I can think of. First Presbyterian Church, they give us a donation twice a year. It's like on a quarterly chart, but they have also been very supportive. Pastor Lance, I call Pastor, but love all. Pastor Lance, these are churches that's been with me since I started walking in my shoes.
And so tell me, I gather why you do this, but how do you look at what it is you're doing? Where does the strength come from? Are you able to get all that? You are able to get all this accomplished, but it's not like it doesn't come without some effort. How do you look at yourself doing these things?
Well, I pray a lot. I do. I just live my life on a just spirituality is what I was raised very early on, being raised in a very strict Baptist family. But the upbringing, that being grounded, all of that just never leaves you. And when I was going through it, I felt like I was in a pity party, feeling sorry for myself, because when I worked all my life, I would buy things for the homeless. They didn't have shelters at that time. They were actually feeding people outdoors. I remember standing with the church in those lines, handing out food to people. I first volunteered at a reception center for babies. I would leave work and go there, and I would just be there because they needed volunteers. I remember all of that. And then when I started going through my own challenges, I was like, wow, how did I get here? Because I didn't understand it at the time. And I was like, am I being forced into this life? But I couldn't rationalize any of it because I felt like I was the only one going through it at that time. And the only reason why I started the street outreach was because I saw that we could do better than that. And I always had that problem-solving mentality that I think I can fix anything if I look at it. and see what is a difficulty. Because when I worked in the private sector, I could see now why I was so valued and appreciated and being promoted. Because keep in mind, I started off as a file clerk. But back then, I didn't need a degree for it, a college degree that they want now. But they wanted a high school diploma and they wanted experience. And I didn't have the experience, but I was being trained to do it.
Okay. So let's say people look at you and say, wow, how can you accomplish all this? What is it that makes you accomplish all this? Is this some special?
It's just my drive, I suppose. I've been doing this 19 years, and to this day, I still feel like I just started. It's the drive to want to make this world a better place than I came into it. And the challenges that I see when someone calls me, I get a phone call or I get an email from a teenager from Racine, and it's just not wanting to leave them, not wanting to. The drive comes from wanting to just help, whatever I can do to help. And it comes natural if you treat people like they're your family. And that's always been my approach. And it has worked well because I'm a no-nonsense person. And I'm just not going to hand you anything. I'm not going to just continue to give you things. And I definitely don't have the manpower to micromanage your life. So you either want the help or you don't. And if they really want the help, they're going to do it. All I'm doing is making the connection for them. And I see the fruit of the labor from that. Because one young lady battling mental illness with children, and they were put into foster care because she was homeless. They said, I'll give you your kids back when you provide a home for them. I helped her get an apartment and helped her fix up their little room with their little characters. She is now a police chief in Racine. She was 20 years old when I met her. She just been promoted to a position at the Racine Police Department. I never thought I would see that.
People see you as a miracle worker?
Well, sometimes they tell me that, but I'm like, no, I'm not a miracle worker. I just wear my love and compassion on my sleeves for others because God has been good to me and I want to be good to others. And it doesn't take a special skill for that, but it does take someone to just listen and to imagine if this life were on you. Is this how you would want to be treated? Because when I was going through this in 2003, I had no one. And my family, oh, just come home. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. I have always been independent, and I wanted to take care of myself. I never even imagined that I would even start a nonprofit organization. I was doing customer service work. But I did my homework, and I sat down, and I was able to put together something that was not even existing here. And now I see other street outreach programs because of that. So I just look at, you know what? Imagine if this were you. Our veterans, they don't deserve this. I've been helping them from day one. I lost a brother-in-law who never came home. He was 19 years old and he wanted to serve this country. Well, they sent him to Vietnam and he never came home. So I've been helping veterans all my life, but this is every day for us, not just when it's a holiday, and we do like a big dinner for them now for Veterans Day. But I'm just doing what I would want someone to do for me, like the Bible says, treat others as you want to be treated. I continue to this day to do that.
How can people help you to continue your work?
Well, that I've been praying and I've been talking to God, and I just wanted to know that all these programs that I've created, I need help. I'm way much older now, and it's not that I'm tired, but I need to start handing programs over to people that I can trust. And I started a campaign for our Ida's House program. I've asked for $1. And do you know that's the hardest thing for somebody to even give $1? But I started a campaign. I wished I had a million friends to help me raise $1 million. Because the programs that I have, I really want to get a building built so I can do our cadence cooking class, which I will be doing, by the way, at KAC September 25th. I'm going to be teaching them a cooking lesson because in 2018, the former mayor, Bossman, they were looking for proposals to start a community garden. And out of all the proposals, they liked mine the best. And they gave us the land, the water, and we started a community garden for people who wanted to grow their food, not the other way around. And we had the veterans garden on one side and all the family and individual on the other side. And we had the garden for about 5 years, and unfortunately, the city took the land back, and now we have to look for places to even just garden to grow our own food. But that continues to go on, but that's the challenge, and not having your own. The cooking class I was at the Bain School teaching kids how to cook after school. There was a YMCA after school program, and one of the teachers said, I think you need to come in here, and that's my passion, is cooking. And I like to cook international cuisines to learn about different cultures. And that's what I started to do. And I love doing cooking. I love teaching people to eat all natural, to eat healthy. Their children with ADHD and all these other medical conditions, just changing their lifestyle and eating healthy can help with that too. And I believe in that holistic healing too. If the doctor tell me, well, Joe, you know, little things is going, I said, let me try the natural way. And I reverse things that the doctor tell me I need to work on. And I have a routine checkup every year. And the beauty of it is the insurance that I have now, they give me a gift card for having a good physical. So that works out pretty good for me. And I just love it because I never thought that my life would be looking like this today. But I think the community has been a very big part of that. And now I know why God had me come to Kenosha. Because at first I really was reluctant to come because I'm like, no, I don't want to go somewhere where I'm going to get lost and not know where to go and who to talk to. But I find that even to this day, Kenosha is the most loving community I've ever been in. I've been to Racine, Milwaukee, Chicago is just fast paced, you know, but Kenosha is more settled, not homebound, but just laid back, quiet, and just want a decent life and not chase after the fast lane. And it is because of the community that I can actually say that our program is getting stronger and it's getting bigger. These programs that I created, they all came from other people's circumstances. But it's something that is needed because we need to fix things that we don't see. Not everything fits in one program. I admire the work that the Shalom Center is doing, but that's not for everybody. And it's not for a senior who's 70 years old and lost their home to medical bills, and they can't sleep on a mat, they can't sleep on a bunk bed, they have physical challenges, and they don't deserve that. But we don't know what's going to come on us. I always tell my sister that as we get older, we don't know one day to the next what's going to come on us, what's going to happen if the wind blow your house down and now you're homeless. I would think you would want us to be here to to help the general community. And that's why I did a reconstruction in 2009 to let the community know that we're here for everyone. And then the phone started ringing and it didn't stop. And there were phone calls from families with mortgages. The husband lost his job and now they're relying on the wife's income. And I started working with people from the county who works with the agency that help people with mortgage. And it just became just us connecting each other. Like whatever you think you might need help with, I think I can connect you to that, because it's not one shoe fit all. And everyone I come in contact with, their circumstances are all different. Not every person that's out there want to be homeless. The ones who do have made it a way of life, and I don't think me or anyone will ever change that. That's something that they have to look within themselves to say, is this the person you want to be? I know that it didn't fit for me, and I didn't want that life, but I didn't want handouts, because we were raised to never take anything that we didn't earn. I didn't want anyone just giving me a bar of soap when I used bath wash, or giving me a meal that they thought I should have, and I don't eat that. And so I just started redoing the program to help the people who want to eat what they're used to eating. Our veterans, we give them gift cards so they can go to Myers or a festival and they can buy whatever they want. And when you're diabetic, there's food you just can't eat. But that's my belief. And it has worked out so well that we said we're not doing a food pantry. I asked the community, if you can't give them a gift card to let them go buy what they want, don't give them what you think they should have. And I have pantries call, and they always ask me, do the veterans need anything? I'm like, well, if you have some fresh fruit, that'll work. But they don't want canned goods. They can't have it. So no, we stopped the food pantry, and they just want what you and I would go to the store and buy for ourselves. And that's how I treat people. Even homeless people, they have mental and physical challenges, but there are certain things they can't have. They can't have whole milk. Some need soy milk. Some get food share. And I'm like, well, you should be feeding yourself pretty good. But there's no check and balance in this system. People are going to do what they want to do, and agencies are going to give what they want to give. But for as far as for me and for what I've created, I don't want to keep them in poverty. I want to pull them out of it. And that's why this program means so much to me. It's because I see the police chief now. I see the kids getting degrees that they never thought they could, because they didn't believe in their own self-worth. When I go to Harborside Academy, they invite me there every year. And I see a little homeless teenager cringing and slooping down in his chair. And when I get to talking, I can see him sit up straight. And I'll look directly at that young man, and then he'll look at me and I'll smile at him, and then I'll turn and look at other kids. But they're so engaged, and how can we help? That's what I get from them. And they'll raise their hand and it's like, can we come visit your organization? And we're helping because we're doing it together. It's no me, it's us. And that's why I believe that I've helped over 9,200 people since I started. And I was only looking to help one. But it came out of us helping them. And if I couldn't help someone, I knew somebody else I could call and say, do you think you could take this kid in for me? And they had a bed that same day. I was always at my desk making phone calls, because I don't send anyone anywhere without me making that referral for them. Because when the lady at that counter handed me that piece of paper, I didn't know what the heck that was. And I'm like, you're sitting here, you can't even make a phone call for me? Then to send me to a place knowing they don't take seniors? But it was a real eye-opener for me that I said, you know what, Lord, I think I'm going to use my customer service skills and I'm going to create Walking in My Shoes. And that just came from my dog and my backpack. And then I started stuffing the backpack, whatever I could fit in there. Because they have side pockets. I would put a bottle of water. The front pocket, I would put the like travel size personal care items. I would put the resource book. And you know where my joy came from is when I was on the bus and I would see someone with my duffel bag on the floor. And I would just smile and say, wow, you know what? I think I am making a difference here. They would go to the job center and they would be on a computer doing their resume and looking for a job. And their backpack would be on the side. And I'm like, you know, I like this program. And before I know it, I was ordering more and more duffel bags. Now I give duffel bags and backpacks. So when they go for their resume, all of their materials in the backpack. And it's just basic common sense sometimes.
Well, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this time to share a little bit about Walking in My Shoes today.